At Third Space Charity, we support a mentally resilient community by offering accessible counseling care to young adults between the ages of 18 and 29. This is Mental Health Matters, where we discuss topics and services related to mental health and wellness in our community.
Welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm Megan Woodruff, and our guest today is Sharlene O'Reilly, local clinical counselor.
Hello, thank you.
Third Space Charity supervisor,
clinical supervisor at Third Space.
Among a bunch of other things in our community.
Yeah, just involved.
Just like to do
Simple,
stuff.
Basic, yeah.
We're happy to have you here today because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And we are hoping to hear some new mental health tips.
That's right. Yeah,
and
outside the
maybe
box.
some things we haven't heard of before.
Maybe, hopefully.
So before we dive into that, tell us about you, for those who don't know you.
Yeah.
Who's Sharlene?
That's a great question. I like to know that too. So I grew up locally. So I'm Okanagan raised and lived here for most of my life, getting out, living in California for 5 years, living in Vancouver for some of my schooling, but back involved, been a part of like youth restorative justice at Boys and Girls Club, and whatever else I can get involved in with events around the awareness of mental health is so fun and exciting for me to be involved in. So that's more or less what I do with a lot of my time, building community connections and whatever else to raise awareness. Yeah.
So you have your own counseling
practice. Yeah, so it's just my name, Sharlene O'Reilly Counseling. So I do that in addition to being a clinical supervisor with Third Space Charity, and I love that opportunity. So fun.
And what type of counseling do you do? Are there any specialties that you have?
That's a great question. I know a lot of people ask for that. I particularly love diving into historical upbringing, perception, but in addition to life transitions, because we all go through changes in our lives from one stage to another, from one age to another, and then just unpacking what that looks like. So the transition from young adulthood into like say more middle-aged, or even like from youth to young adult. That high school, young adult age is one of my favorites because there's a whole lot of conversation around who am I in this world and what do I have to offer, and it's just so much of I'm outside of my family's norm, the comforts of home, their way of being, where you're now asking these questions of what do I want. But that transition also exists from parenthood into grandparenthood, from like career to retirement. Like there are so many aspects of our life where life transitions happen, or even dealing with like a medical diagnosis, having to make massive life transitions there with those. So that I think is a pretty broad spectrum, like saying life transitions in just establishing who you are and your identity in the world.
One thing that I have always appreciated about you is your mindset. You are able to overcome adversity and have really, really positive and good thoughts.
Yeah.
You're able to reframe things even in your own personal life or with your clients. I've always admired that about you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, like having gone through some crazy medical things in the last 2.5 years, which I'm very open about, like having to have emergency surgery, a colostomy for 1.5 years, then ultimately having melanoma, going through that process with lymph node removal.
And that was when I met you.
Yes.
When I first met you had the colostomy and you had the emergency surgery.
Yep.
You were waiting. For
long time.
And then once the wait became over, they found melanoma.
Yeah, so I had my big surgery appointment for Vancouver to have the hysterectomy and the colostomy reversal. But then I had a mole removed and it came back as melanoma. And so then I had to kind of pause that, which was hard, to kind of be like, yay, the end is in sight. And then boom, like now I have this potential for cancer where I'm like, hey, we're going to go as aggressive as possible. So I had lymph nodes traced and then removed. And just all of that I jokingly in the OR called it my minor left-sided tummy tuck because it was just like one side, and gave them a laugh. And I'm like, guys, like, let's just be positive about this. hopeful ultimately that I have more than 5 years to live, essentially is what it came down to.
Right.
And everything came back as benign and clear. So we were pumped about that. That was a great celebration. And then I got to reschedule the big surgery, which happened last July. And through the process, I just realized I'm like, I could either like live in this or I could live for the other side. And I chose recognizing choice. Like I chose to live for the other side of it, knowing that I had something to live for. And I just needed to see myself in that next season of life. And in order to do that, then like I had to have that push. Giving myself permission though, and this is something that I push with a lot of my clients and the interns, is we need permission to feel what we feel when it comes up. Because I had a lot of people telling me, you're too strong, you're handling this too well. And I'm like, no, you're just not seeing me cry in the shower. Like, I'm not posting about that. Like, you're not seeing me have those days where I'm like, I don't want to get up today because getting up means I have to change my colostomy and like all of these aspects of reality. But ultimately, I knew that things were going to pivot and I could live or I could live in suffering. And what my focus was to see this as this is a temporary scenario. For me, thankfully, it was all temporary to get through to the other side of it and resolve what the scenario was and be hopeful and happy. And that was just, I think, like big. So for people going through any type of a temporary chaos, like there's a type of theoretical orientation that talks about emotions and experiences being transient. Like there are a transient or a transitional event. Emotions are here for, you're not living in them long term, hopefully. So if you see it as like, hey, I'm going to feel this, experience this, and then I'm going to move forward afterwards.
And know that it's temporary.
Yeah, it's going to come to an end. And I mean, I talked to like a lot of medical professionals saying I probably would be handling this a little bit differently if I knew this was like a long-term thing that I might be living in, which a lot of people face these days. A lot of people are in that long-term, but it's like, hey, can I make the most of this situation? Can I make this educational? Can I share all about my colostomy with everybody and be like, what do you want to know? What do you have questions about? Because people are like, shameful like around sharing those things where I'm just like, let's talk about it. Let's remove the fear by engaging with it. And so that could be talking about sadness. No one wants to talk about sadness because they're afraid that either it's going to be contagious or they just don't know what to do, but it's okay.
They don't want to put it on other people or they don't want to fully embrace it and feel it and dive into it. One thing that was so interesting was your recovery. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. After you had your major surgery, the physicians were blown away.
They were shocked, dumbfounded.
Blown away by your recovery. And I know that you believe in the the power of biopsychosocial, all of this coming together, the power of our thoughts. And what I think is really cool is you are a walking example of that because your recovery was unbelievable. The doctors were blown away. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Sure, I'm very much, I live in the biopsychosocial spiritual lens.
And so maybe let's actually
What is that?
What is that? What is that?
Great. It's a great starting point, a foundation, right? Recognizing that we are made up of a ton of systems, right? And I look at like our biology is electrical and then it's chemical. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Our thoughts are actually synaptic processing, right? It is electricity. My ability to speak is the communication between different aspects of the brain, but that's electricity. Like it is electrical in that. So recognizing we are made up of a whole lot of different systems that communicate within itself. And then we communicate to our systems with our thoughts and our language and our talking. And then we also communicate with each other. We communicate with the world. Like we have relationships with everything. And so I became very aware of like the different systems in my body that were impacted by what went on. And then I started seeing it as like, how can I champion my systems? How can I cheer for them? And I started diving into the impact of negative thinking, negative words, because you see like those different like videos of I spoke negatively to this plant and I spoke positively to this plant. You know,
I
like,
haven't seen that. Is that a thing?
oh, there are, like, yes, it's like, it's a bullying component, right? But they're like, look at what saying negative things to this plant does to this plant. It actually kills it. Versus speaking positively to one plant. And there's a lot of like energy conveyed in the frequency of our talk, and then the power of words. Power of words have a lot of implication in the fallout of them, right? So if somebody's telling you negative things, you're going to kind of like shrink back, cower in. Somebody's pouring out into you. I notice this with my clients when I'm encouraging them and calling out the gold in them. They kind of like sit up a little bit more, and they kind of like take ownership of who they are. And they believe that. And when you believe something, your brain responds and your body responds. So in the course of my recovery, I cheered for my intestine. Like, I championed my body. And I would say, you got this, we're going to do this. And knowing like full well this is going to hurt. There's going to be a lot of like frustrations. I have to go slow. So recognizing the reality of the biology. But how could I support that? What could I do? And so the surgeons were quite shocked, like even day 2 of my like post-op. I'm sitting in the hospital, obviously having an epidural, which resolves any kind of pain. So I'm sitting there pain-free, hanging out, and they come walking in and they're like, you don't look like a 2-day post-op, like massive surgery, like person, 28 staples, you know, like the stoma, the colostomy reversal, like all of these things. And I'm like, I've been waiting for this day.
You were.
I've been counting down. I've been pumped for this, and I'm here now. So like, this has been the goal, and I have a life to live because I have no cancer. I have a full functioning system, minus, you know, the reproductive system, but that's okay. Like, I am healthy and I am happy, and I can now do whatever I want, right? And so going into that with recognition of timelines, okay, I'm giving myself 4 weeks to kind of do absolutely nothing, like to allow the healing to happen and to cheer for my body and to empower it with like effective nutrition and the sense of recognition of what it's done, to honor my system for what it's been fighting for, to give permission for my body to feel what it needs to feel. And so going through that, and then it was like, okay, I have another 4 weeks, the 8 weeks, because the doctors all talk to you within that 4 week. How are you doing? How's this? And then the 8 week component, and they're all like, you're doing what? Because I was back to work at 2 weeks post-op.
We were like, what are you doing? What are you doing here?
Yeah, but I'm like, okay, listen, my job is kind of bougie. I sit for an hour at a time, and then I can lay down. Yeah. Right. So there was that benefit. Otherwise, a lot of women who get hysterectomies, like open hysterectomies in particular, they're out for 3 months, and that's healthy. It's needed for your system to fully recover. So in my mind, I had this 3-month window, but I would give it in stages of accomplishment and permission for expectations on myself, and recognize I'm not going to push myself beyond what I'm capable of, and I'm going to listen to what my body is saying. And if it's like, Shar, take a nap, Shar would take a nap. You know, like if it's like, okay, Shar, you need to go for a walk, I would go for a walk. Because it's like there's the necessary movement that you needed to engage in for your body to kind of slowly re-enter the world and not completely do nothing, because then it's a harder reintegration. So
you truly are walking the talk in terms of your style of counseling that you do, and it's great. I love working with you and being a witness to this and seeing people who are living in that power and in that strength. It's so cool. So
I can speak to it too, right? To that component of like, yeah, you probably need to take a nap.
Yeah. We all need a nap sometimes.
Yeah. Is that a mental health tip? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Let's talk about those. Let's talk about those. So you're here today to share some tips with us that maybe we haven't heard of before.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do the ones that everyone kind of knows.
No.
So I'm excited. I've been thinking about this morning. I'm like, ooh, what's she gonna bring today?
It's like a good question, right? So coming from like the biopsychosocial approach, you can throw spiritual in there too, because a lot of people really have that connection in their lives. So from the biological standpoint, I came up with this acronym. There's probably other ones out there, like of SNOW, right? So SNOW's the acronym.
Okay.
So sleep. Are you sleeping? That's mental health, right? Like managing changes in sleep patterns is something to become aware of. But are you giving yourself permission to sleep? Is stress keeping you from sleeping? If so, you probably need to give some attention to that.
I'm reading a book called The Nap Ministry.
Ooh.
And that's all it's about is
Yeah.
just how positive it is to sleep and to rest, and we deserve it.
Yes.
And if anyone wants to work on giving themselves permission to rest, that's a great book, The Nap Ministry.
Yes.
Anyway, continue.
Yes, but I think we kind of like equate it by saying I need to sleep less to get more done, but enough sleep allows you to do more, and you don't get enough sleep, then your brain doesn't get to do what it needs to do to kind of, I like to call it refiling. Like all of your daily things need to kind of be sorted and processed. And
when
memories
you sleep?
need to be, yes, and it happens when you sleep.
Okay.
When you sleep. So if you don't do that, then you're kind of like, what am I doing with my life? So sleep is the S. N, nutrition. So what are you eating? Is your expectation for output reciprocal or relatable or conducive based on what you're inputting? So if I'm going to eat a whole ton of donuts and expect myself to run a marathon, it's probably going to be difficult because you're not giving yourself the nutrition that your system actually needs to be healthy and happy. And I always consider this, 500 calories of your daily intake goes to your brain function. So what are you feeding your brain?
Oh.
So like, what are you giving your brain to like power up and be productive in the day with based on what you're eating? And so if you're eating like really not so great food, then that's what you're feeding your brain. And if you're expecting it to output better, you're not setting it up to succeed, right? So you pay attention when you look at it as a functional thing as opposed to, oh, I'm hungry, I should eat. And you look at it as like, how can I feed myself so that I could be the best version of myself? It's going to impact every system because it is all multi-connected systems happening. Endocrine system, cardiovascular system, digestive system, reproductive system, they're all connected.
500 calories of the day.
Go to your brain.
Go to your brain.
Brain alone. And then you have like, okay, if I'm moving, I'm pouring like calories are going to this, but they have to go to here first to tell it what to do. So it goes to the brain to just function.
Okay.
Right? So nutrition, what are you feeding yourself? And then it's the outside.
Outside.
Outside, go touch grass.
Oh,
Ground to the earth. Yes, go out, get some vitamin D. Connect to the earth, take your shoes off and stand in the dirt, right? Re-engage. There's a lot of like electron reciprocation that happens there, like transmissions. So it's very interesting. We as electrical beings, grounding, earthing, nature bathing. It's a thing to go hang out for multiple hours in the middle of a forest. So calming for your system. Removes you from the chaos, the busyness, the demands, the electricity that you're getting from like all of that other stuff. So what are you feeding your system that way? Getting outside into the great outdoors and just allowing yourself to be.
I've also heard that you can purchase.
Yes, you can. There's a lot of like grounding materials.
Grounding.
Mats.
Mats that you
bracelets,
can stand on.
Yep. Yes.
Sheets for your bed.
Yes.
That plug into the grounder of your electrical outlet.
Yeah.
Is that real or is that?
It's not woo-woo, it's actually real.
It's not woo-woo, it's real. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is, because we are electrical beings, right? So
if you're, say, healing from a surgery, and you can't go outside, or maybe you can't walk, you're not mobile.
Right. You can get grounding sheets, grounding mats, and then they just plug into like the grounding outlet, and then you basically are re-energized. It sounds silly, but like electrons come from the earth and go into your system, and what they actually do. So when you're fighting something, when you're inflamed, so it's basically beating inflammatory, right? Like swollen, like difficulty, your system, all those white blood cells, they go to kind of heal you. And so in order to do that, they pull electrons from the red blood cells. So then red blood cells have to bind together to maintain their charge as they travel throughout your system. And what you do when you ground again is you're pouring, like you connect to the earth, and the earth has a negative charge, and it sends new electrons into your system to kind of lighten the viscosity. So basically it thins the blood in a good way by reinstating electrons into those red blood cells, into the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. So it is a very cellular thing, and it's real, and it's measurable for people. It just sounds strange because we've never entertained that from a scientific standpoint, as opposed to from like that, let's hold energy in a very strange perspective, right? Like a mindset. So for it to be seen as scientific is now kind of getting out there as, go send your kids outside to run in the yard barefoot, right? Like allow them to kind of get reintroduced. Allow yourself. That's why people love going barefoot on the beach, right? Like they're noticing that they're calm when they're by the ocean. They notice that they're rested on vacation, and it's like, well, your shoes are usually off, right? You're hanging out, you're spending time on the ground outside on vacation. Not so
Unless
much.
you have 2 children under 5.
Well, that could be entertaining outside. This is
Vacations
true.
are different.
Yes, a lot different. Okay, but you could be in the sand with them, right? Even holding trees. Go touch a tree, right?
I'm just messing with you.
All of those things. So being outside is really healthy for you from that standpoint.
Sleep, nutrition, outside.
Water.
Oh, I was wondering what the the W was going to be.
Just drink water.
Just drink water.
Hydrate yourself. It's just really, we're primarily made up of water, right? So we need to kind of like just give ourselves enough water to drink throughout the day to be hydrated. It's just healthy. And when you drink caffeine, you probably need to load a little bit more because it just emits it out a little bit more, like when you're caffeinated.
Okay.
But yeah, like, so those components are really looking after the self. So that's the biological standpoint of it is are you paying attention to these things within yourself? And then, so the psycho component sounds like a psychological perspective.
Psychological perspective, okay.
Yes, so that would be more like thoughts, emotions. So emotions are actually chemical, again, coming back to that, not to be reductionistic, but they are signals from your system telling you something about how you feel. Are you listening to them? Are you giving them heed? Are you paying attention? What's your body actually saying? What's your system saying about how your interactions with everything around you are leading you to think and feel?
Say that again. Emotions are signals?
Signals from your system. Yeah. About how the interactions around you are leading you to think and feel about something, right? Like that is the feeling component.
So what would be an example of a signal? Like a tightening of the throat?
So that's a physiological signal. So but it is like paying attention to, like, why am I sad? Can you name what emotion you're feeling?
Right.
So like
Instead
sad,
of
fear,
just
surprise,
walking
joy.
around stressed all day, actually stopping and saying, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, why am I feeling this way?
Okay.
Why am I sensing this?
Bringing attention to.
Yeah. And naming it can be so powerful because when you can be like, whoa, I'm sad, or like, okay, whoa, I'm noticing I'm super stressed out, or I'm really frustrated, or I'm really irritated at this individual, then it gives you this moment to be like, interesting, like why? Why am I irritated? Why am I frustrated? And then you can dive into a conversation. And then again, going back to, what are you saying to yourself as a result? How are you speaking to your system? How are you being kind to your body? What does that mean? What does that look like? And so I think there's this aspect of paying attention to what your system is like. It's like flags. They're flags, right? Emotions can be flags. It's like when you get a red flag in a relationship, what does that cause you to do? A little bit of a pause. So you might be getting a red flag or a green flag. Like I sometimes sit there and I'm like, why am I so happy? I mean, my needs are being met, my values are being met. Like, I'm just pumped to live life, right? And I'm like, I can give myself honor for the fact that I feel this way.
Okay.
Yeah, paying attention to it on an emotional level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there more?
Yeah, so emotions, so biopsychosocial, so the social. This is probably a huge one.
Okay.
And this can be wrapped into spiritual too.
Okay.
Connect to community, hang out with people, participate with others.
I love what you say about connection. Your talk on connection is like...
we need other people.
We need people.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Like we're wired that way. We're wired to connect. People can heal us. We get really good feedback from people on like writing our way. Like I always tell people, I'm like, I have really good friends who are like, Shar, maybe you need to reconsider that, right? Like give me feedback. Or I also have encouragers and champion people like who are pushing me beyond or calling out my goals, like telling me that I am capable of more than I'm allowing myself to do. And so we need that. We need people to kind of like right us when we're getting a little off kilter, and then we need people to cheer us on when we need that. So the social component is so important to connect to others, because especially within like a particular zone, you know, like our little personal space, we need people in that space helping us when we're sad, or we need to cheer other people up in their space, right, when they're not so good. And sometimes it's just sitting next to them without words, just being a present individual, giving presence, right, attention.
Not everyone needs an hour of clinical therapy.
No.
Sometimes we just need a friend, someone to be safe with, to sit with.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to see you on a panel this month.
Yes.
So May 23rd, Sharlene is actually going to be on a panel at our Open Space series in collaboration with Okanagan Lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's the 23rd, and you're going to be speaking to boundaries, moral injuries, soul care, all this good stuff.
All those things. Self-compassion also.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today.
You bet.
I know we could talk forever.
If
Hours
people
and hours.
want
more Sharlene, how do they find you?
It's my website, charleneoreilly.com. That's more or less. My social media is the same, Sharlene O'Reilly Counseling.
Okay.
And just reach out. Love to chat.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and happy Mental Health Awareness Month.
See ya.